Hi everyone, Gustav here. Today I'd like to show you one technique related with displaying active filters on a report page. And we will be focusing on this technique specifically. There are also other alternatives that I would like to show on a general level view about showing either the counter of how many filters has been activated, has been selected, or which items belonging to the specific fields, the specific filters has been applied, whether it's like the specific business line selected as one segment or multiple segments are here, one country or multiple countries, and so on. So there are more basic approaches, there are also more complex approaches. However, for today meeting, we'll be focusing on that in particular. And even if you wouldn't like to bring this solution entirely from A to Z exactly as it will be discussed during the conversation, you might still get some benefits of the partial formulas and approaches and the logic that I just wanted to show you today. Let's go to the different Power BI with the use case. We are analyzing here the revenues and the quantities. In that case, we have filtered the quantities. However, it's not the most important thing. What I would like to show you is that on this particular report page, we have some of the filters hidden in our additional filter pane. It's not always the case that we have to use this kind of the user interface with the additional filters hidden under the additional pane. However, in the use cases where we actually have this kind of additional pane, this feature that shows you what filters has been applied and what filters have been applied is even more advantageous in that case. And also in other use cases, it can be also advantageous to include that even if we don't use the additional filter pane as here. Nevertheless, the logic behind this kind of the functionality is that if nothing is selected, nothing is filtered as we have in this particular state, this information is called for applied filters, no active filters. However, if we start selecting specific filters, the items belonging to the specific filters, we can see that now there's information that the business line field is activated and which specific items belong to that activation. So in that case, it's cloud providers. If you would also like to include the cybersecurity, for example, now you can see that there is a business line, and under the business line, we actually selected the cloud providers and cybersecurity specifically. If we go to the different filter and, for example, choose one of the segment, you can see that now we can also see that not only the business line is selected, but it's also the segment selected. And we also see the belongings items for the segment and the business as well. If now I will reset to default, now we can still all see the all selected in data. So none of the filters are now activated. So I'd like to show you quickly how it can be built. So for that one, I use the new card, the card visualization. You can see that there is a placeholder. So it's not so important for me just to bring the most final calculation for this filters display. I would rather use the placeholder. The placeholder, in my case, is just a measure which retrieves the blank. So it's a blank measure, but it's still enough to bring the functionality we would like to actually use. So for the callout values, I want to have the value and the label turned off because the callout value is not the most important element of this card in this use case. What we want to achieve is to leverage the reference labels. So in the reference labels, we have this placeholder v1 is our main measure. And then if we go to the select label, you can actually see that I applied the add label functionality. So I drag from our model. If we check some of the measures, we already have this created, which is the filters active filter text, and I will just drag this this measure here. And then if I go to select labels, you can see that there is a title. This title is bring as a custom. It's not the field name. It's changed to being the custom one. And I just typed the applied filters as here. The value, I have that turned off. And the detail is what is the most important because we might also use the value. However, in that case, I wanted to bring additional conditional formatting for the background. So in that case, as we don't have this conditionally formatted background in the value section, the value is turned off and I'm using the detail, and the detail is turned on. In that case, I can apply the color for the font color and the background as well. And I will show you what is the logic behind this conditional formatting. conditional formatting. However, I would like to show you how it's actually built from the standpoint of the calculations. So the one that I use is the final one, but I don't want to show the final one just right now. I would like to show you how it's built. I will create a simple matrix table just to show you given steps and what this measure actually returns. So let's start with the first one. We are in the folder which is called the filter display. We have two important subfolders, base and advanced variable level one, which actually allows us to bring all these concatenated names. Let's start with the basic one. So active filters count number give us a number of active filters. So now it's 0 because we didn't apply any filters yet. If you would like to show you, if you would like to see how it works, it's that we basically used the is filtered, and for this is filter, we are checking each field that is in our filter pane, or we actually, it doesn't necessarily have to be in a filter pane, because you might have a combination of the slicer which are on a filter pane and are outside of the filter pane. Nevertheless, the logic behind this formula is just to bring all the filters that are important to you, that you would like to bring this information about the active filter and the items displayed. So in that case, we have four different fields. It's checking is filtered on a business line, on a segment, on a customer name, and a country. And int give us information like it's a 1 or 0 depending on whether it's filtered. If it's filtered, it's translated to number 1. If it's not filtered, it's translated to number 0. And in that case, we are just bringing the list on the form as a form of a table. So we are bringing this checks whether it's a true or false, and we're using the SUMX. So we are basically going through all of these rows, all of these items in a table, and just summing all these one numbers. So if, for example, the business line is active and the segment is active, we'll end up with number 2 because it's number 1 for the first line and the number 1 for that line. It's the result of this variable. So in that case, we are retrieving the number 2 in that case. In that case, as we don't have any filters applied, it's 0. Then we have the same measure, which is count text. So it's basically the same thing. I will also go to the values and activate the option switch values to rows. Count text, it's just basically the same we discussed it previously, but it's with the format 0. And sometimes it can be helpful if you would like to have additional counter as here, where you would like to place it as a text and not as a value, in order to being even able to actually put that piece of text as a dynamic text in that case. But it's not the most important for our use case. And you might also use a supplemental measure, whether it checks if our fact table is actually empty or not, because sometimes we might be in such loop of the filter selection that we actually have no data available for the specific filter selection. Sometimes we don't use the hierarchy slicer, or rather the different separate slicer, and we might end up in a situation where by cross filtering these behaviors, we don't have any data on our report page. So it actually checks and brings this either 1 or 0 value to check whether there are some data or not on our report page. So in that case, we see the data, it's retrieved the number 1. Then what is important is those 4 measures here. And I tried to actually create a single measure per each slicer I would like to include in our solution, because it makes us DAX a little bit like more understandable. We just have to remember that every time we'd like to include one additional slicer, we just have to add this one additional filter, and it will be just one step. Now we don't see any results here because nothing is filtered yet. However, if you go to the filter pane and check, let's say not all, but rather the cloud providers, and let's close that. Let's make it a little bit bigger. You can see that the result of this particular measure is the business line, which is the header of the slicer, and the items belonging, which is in that case cloud provider, because we only pick one cloud providers. So how it works in general. We have the formula based on a concatenate x. So we're bringing all the values, bringing all the items which belonging to our business line, and we are just concatenated all of them using the comma here. We have also applied the sorting order, which are these two lines. However, in that case, it's not so crucial. I didn't sort it by, let's say, the given metric like the revenues, etc. It's sorted either in alphabetical order or by ID, depending on the fields I used. But the most important idea is that we are using the concatenatics just to bring all these items which are active. And it might be, then we are using the switch true. It might be also the if statement in that case. And we are just checking whether our business line filter is even active. Is it filtered or not? So if it's filtered, brings the header and bring all the items belonging. If not, there is a blank outcome if we don't filter the slicer. So the condition is met if we actually filtering any items belonging to the business line. And in that case, how we can achieve the bold thing, it's very optional. It's not a game changer by any means, but you can use the AI text page to input some kind of the text, for example, the business line. And you can copy paste this text and bring it here, and you might achieve that result that the header is a little bit more highlighted because of this bold text. It's totally optional. You will be perfectly fine if you just bring the business line. There will be not such distinction between the header and the items belongings, however, it will be still fine. And then we have this repetitive measure. Don't worry about this like red underline. We have this repetitive metric for each filters that we are actually bringing to our final measure. If I would go to the filter pane and filter, for example, one additional segment, you can see that segment now is also available here in our measure. And this is the final measure. It might look complex, and it is to some extent. On the other hand, the good thing is that it's quite repetitive process. Like you can just copy paste it across the different reports, just change a few things, and it will be working fine. Of course, depending on your logic, etc. So there are a few steps. The filter cap means how many filters would you like to be capped on. Like you might have 2 filters, you might have 5, 10, etc. So the logic is after you reach this this cap, this threshold, you might retrieve specific text annotation that I will show you right in a second. Then we have the text length cap, and it's quite important because this annotation can get quite lengthy if you have a lot of different dimensions, a lot of different fields and a lot of different items selected. So this is the cap you can like control, just think on how many report space you have, and in that case you can just adjust that depending on your report structure and your needs. So in that case, it's capped on 220 letters. Then we have the active filters count, which we calculating and shown here, and whether it's the active items means whether the fact table is empty or not. So we are referencing these 2 measures that I showed you previously. And then we are creating the table, which actually brings all of these rows, all of this calculation. So row, filter, group item, business line, etc. Actually retrieving the one line in a table, which brings these 4 measures that we are actually building previously. And then we are filtering this table. We are just creating this list by only this one, that this filter is not blank. So actually the final outcome of this table is that if we applied some filters, we are bringing these filters, these rows, because we are using the filter active, whether it's true or not, because this column just checking if it's true or not, if that's blank or not, and then we are actually unfiltering or actually filtering all of these rows which are corresponding to the filters that are active, that are filtered. So in that case, if the segment is selected as only one filter, we are ending up with having this table as with the one row with this concatenation of all the items. We have this in a group items segment. Then we concatenate the filter list with the pipeline, with the icon. So we might have long concatenation of business line. We have long concatenation of the segments, countries, and customer, and then we are just concatenating all of this together. If something is blank, it won't be concatenated because it's blank, but if something appeared in our filtered mode, it will appear here. And then we are checking the length. What is the length of this entire text after all the concatenation, because we would like to make a cap at some point. And then we have the result, and we've made some checks. So if the filter counted is 0, we don't filter anything, or if it's blank, we display the information no active filters. If active items is 0, so we are ending in a situation where there is no data available on our report page, we might have a different text. In that case, it's the text no data available for the current filter selection, adjust your filters to display results, etc. You might adjust it to your needs. If the text length is higher than our cap, which is 220, then bring additional like multi-selections and how many filters has been selected. So it's like the kind of the alternative annotation for the end user, that there are so many different multiple selections that it's actually capped at some point. So instead of having like, we might also include like the ellipses at the end, but it would be a little bit different logic. So it's not covered in this particular use case. And in some cases, we might also, if the filter cap, if we exceeded our filter cap, maybe just bring the multiple active filters. So this last step is the most optional. Of course, we can adjust this logic a little bit, depending on the needs. So in that case, if we bring this final measure here to our text, it might be also created using the text box. In that case, it's created using the card. One thing that I would like to show you is that, as you might already notice, we have one additional slicer here, which is called Sales Manager. So let's assume we have reset all filters to default, and let's bring one of the persons selected here in our business line. You can see that nothing has changed here. There is no active filters because this particular filtered hasn't been included in our logic. So we have to add that. So let's quickly check how we can add. One thing that we have to do, like this is our starting point, is that we have to add this here. So now we are also adding the manager. In that case, we have to identify our sales manager dim. In that case, let's assume it's gonna be, it might be a dim customer or the manager full name. We'll check it in a second what we used. In that case, we want to bring it here to our list. It's gonna be manager. And I will press enter. Now let's go here and check which field actually is used. It's a dim customers actually. So just to show you that this filter can also be delivered from a different dimension, let's bring it here. Okay, and now it's derived from the dim size manager. I will bring one person once again. So now one difference is that you can see that there is a number 1 here because it was activated. Now we are bringing to our counters. Let's bring it here, and we need one additional measure for that one. It's gonna be manager. You can easy Control Shift L, make it here. And one thing that we can also adjust is, of course, the header in that case. So let's quickly go here. This text is quite lengthy. Maybe sales rep could be also an alternative or other ways to achieve the result. but for just to keeping the information just the same as here, the same title, let's keep it as a sales manager. So we have filters, group items, manager. We have all items belonging to manager full name. We're checking whether it's filtered or not, and we are retrieving the sales manager header along with the items. And the last thing we have to add is here in a filter, active filter text, when we have to add this additional row. And it's gonna be manager. And now we can see that if we also bring our control table here, this is sales manager through Eva Johnson. So we obtain that result. If I would bring more filters, you can see that applied filters now are the business line cloud providers item and the one sales manager, Eva Johnson in that case. And we can close that. We can see now what the data has been selected. And if you would like to restore the filters to all selected mode, we can use additional button, restore all the filters, and we can continue the analysis. So for today meeting is everything I wanted to show you. It might be quite complex. However, given steps are quite straightforward to copy, paste, and adapt, adjust, etc. So I believe that even if you wouldn't like to apply the solution entirely like 100% as it was presented here, maybe just some part of the counter calculation or any other logic might be also beneficial in your use cases. And if you would like me to cover specific different methods to showing displaying active filters, let me know in the comment section, and I can introduce these additional techniques in the future videos. So at that point, have a great day and take care. Thanks for watching. Bye.